Hey everybody, it's Billy Boy here. Today we're going to talk about the buff to the Goddess of the Night, Nox. Did this buff really make her viable, or is it another flopped attempt by Hi-Rez to redeem a character in the Battleground of the Gods that just really hasn't been relevant for a long time? We'll go into that, and we'll go into where she fits into the current meta and some really creative options with her. If you really enjoy this content or you want to join in on the discussion with us, please like, sub, comment, and especially check out our community Discord that we started. This is where we really discuss these types of things, and we enjoy discussing these things without being toxic, and we hang out and we have fun and we enjoy the game as we see it was meant to be. Really a fun competitive game. Unfortunately, a lot of people get really toxic about this game in particular, and I feel like we're trying to do something about that and really bring people together and have a great community around being able to have discussions and play together and avoid all this toxicity that you see in a lot of places. So if you'd like to be a part of that, please support the channel and join the Discord so that we can be that community that we want to see Smite be. It's such a great game, and we definitely want to grow it. So without further ado, let's get right into the question. Did the buff make Nox viable? Definitely coming into this, I really didn't think this buff was going to change her that much. I thought that she was garbage, that all of my teammates who picked her were really just throwing the game because I felt like she, it seemed habitually just didn't do very much. And I don't know if it was because of my teammates or whether it was because of me not really playing around her well as maybe a support or a carry or whatever I was playing at the time. But after having played her in mid, I really think that I was wrong about her, even without the recent buff, which I think helped, and we'll get into that. But Nox is a high utility mage. She has a lot of damage potential, but for her to be extremely effective, she really needs a team around her, especially her support. Most of you are already aware that Nox's kit really revolves around her using her 2-1 combo to lay that silence bubble and then to land the skill shot of the root, capture that player in that bubble. And those who are caught in there, either they have the option to use their beads if their beads are up, or just take a load of damage and be immobile and vulnerable for 2 seconds. It's an extremely powerful tool in a team fight for the rest of her team. Whoever she hits should die really quickly. And there's not really much that can be done about it other than relic usage or a couple of counter picks that we'll talk about later. Landing that combo, if you're playing in lower level lobbies, or maybe you're smurfing or whatever, it's a skill shot that you can, as an experienced player, really abuse lower level players on, because you can position to ambush, you can catch them off guard, you can just free cast it sometimes, and if you're a good player, you know how to set up the situations to land that ability often, right? To land that combo often, and when you do, it's really devastating to the other player because it just does so much damage. And it sets up for the rest of your team just to free cast onto them. One of the questions that we're going to look at today is, does she have any place in higher level games? We're going to engineer kind of the perfect storm of what it would take for Nox to be successful, and then we'll take a look at ways that she can be countered. So let's go into that right now. Because Nox's damage fundamentally comes from her landing her 2-1 combo, which is a skill shot, having a support that really sets up that combo and makes that skill shot unmissable is going to play a huge role in the success of Nox as a mid laner. And luckily for her, there's so many good like meta guardians and warrior supports right now that can do that well. Horus, Sobek, Xingtian, Khepri, Yamoja. Yamoja has a great setup for her. Oh, cool. That's fun. One of the things that Nox does really well with her support is that she burns beads really, really well. And having supports that burn beads frequently will actually really, really help. And having a team comp that can really abuse that is really good. Any kind of jungle or carry that can really follow up with high damage or follow up with the heavy CC is going to make your team excel. So let's run through this in our heads. Nox, after the support rotates out of duo, generally is going to be around the support, which keeps her really safe, and they're going to be gobbling up farm, and they combo really well together, like 9 times out of 10. In theory, that's the way it's supposed to work, but the fun of this game a lot is building the theory, then testing it, right? So in practice, it'll take all the other skills that you've learned as a Smite player, like communication with your support, map awareness, positioning, and it's never a free win in Smite. So with all that being said, your early and mid game with Nox should be around the support, and y'all should be working together to secure farm and catching anybody out of position, or even being aggressive, knowing that Nox's combo with any kind of follow-up from the jungle or just with the support should do a great amount of damage and pull beads often, allowing you to invade and do all sorts of other things to get a lead in the mid game. So with that being said, let's look at the late game. What about the late game? Nox generally has to get pretty close to the enemies to use her abilities and land her one after using her two. And doing this makes her a lot easier of a target. So because of Nox's ability to hide in her teammates, it makes her a lot safer to be in the front line than a lot of other mages who really have to come in, use their abilities or use abilities over walls and such, and then hide or dance around or juke until their abilities are back up. Nox can go in, use her 2-1 combo, hide in a teammate, come out, use her 2-1 combo, and at that point she is a lot more vulnerable, but then she just has the normal situation of dancing around until she can get her abilities back up. Nox also has the ability to really supplement a dive comp too, because of her ability to jump into a teammate, let them dive, and then she can explode out and drop her kit and then do whatever. At that point, she'll be really vulnerable, so if you dive into a teammate and they get the beads Aegis of whoever they're diving on, and then Nox is just kind of awkwardly standing there, juking abilities and trying not to die now that her escape is down. So it's a risky thing to do, but if you know that you're going to blow him up or you're going to go in on like a Thor stun and the guy doesn't have beads, right, you can use that. It's another creative way to use Nox's unique abilities in a team fight. And then we haven't even talked about the ultimate yet. So for her ultimate, it's on a really short cooldown, and it gets really unique. It has some really unique properties. One, it's really high scaling. You're going to have 100% magical scaling on her ultimate, and it's going to do a lot of base damage. So another thing about her ult is that the cooldown for her ult is really, really low. You can usually start a fight with her ult and use her fight to clean up anybody running away from the ult. You can also, if your teammate sets up and you use your 2-1 combo and you get somebody really low within one shot or whatever, you can throw your ult out, and it's kind of a harder ability to body block because it's an AoE after it detonates, so you can't just like straight Neath body block it like you can with Neath ult or something like that, right? So in that way, it makes it a good initiation. It also has a 40% damage reduction. So if you see the opportunity for your teammates to dive in and you're in comms with them, or you know that they want to dive in, you can initiate the fight with your ult on their damage dealers, and it really opens up the opportunity for your frontlining solo or your jungle to come in, blow up a character, and not really worry about taking so much damage that they're just going to die right away. That 40% damage reduction is a huge team fight ability, especially if you can get it off on the right targets. So with all of these tools in her kit, building a team comp around this character actually isn't as hard as some people have suggested. So far, we've only discussed her synergy with certain supports, but there are 3 other roles that you could pick to either complement her strengths or guard against her weaknesses. Speaking of, let's discuss those weaknesses now and how her buff really addresses one of those weaknesses. So where is Nox weak? Nox has always struggled with her lane clear, and honestly, that's at all points of the game, right? Before her buff, her only real option for lane clear was to position her 2 perfectly so that it hit both the melee and the archer minions. And any kind of wave manipulation really hurt her wave clear. And yes, you could ult the wave, or you could position so that you dash through the wave, but realistically doing those things is really unviable. If you dash through the wave, you're making yourself vulnerable because you no longer have your dash. Or if you ult the wave, you're going to be down and not have your CC immune ult, making you vulnerable, and it gets rid of a lot of your kill potential. So is Nox's 1 now a viable way to clear the lane for Nox? Absolutely not. But it is a really good supplement to help her clear the wave if she misses a couple of minions, or uses her 2 and a lot of them still have just a bit of health left. You don't have to sit there and auto every single minion. You can use your 1 and usually it will clear out whatever is left over. The big thing that really helps is that it allows her to do other things. A lot of times before the buff, she would always be slower rotating, or she wouldn't be able to clear the jungle as efficiently. And this buff really helps her quality of life in clearing minions, and it's not a complete game changer in how fast her clear is, but it at least allows her some more viability so she doesn't fall behind as easily. But is her lane clear still an issue? I would say yes, but not as big of an issue as it was before. So the other big weakness for Nox as a mid laner is any god with cleanses, whether it's Gab, Hel, Kiron, whatever. This is going to be like her actual biggest weakness as a mid laner. Because the core of her kit is centered around her 2-1 combo, it takes a fair amount of time for damage to actually apply. And any cleanses completely counter that damage, right? And it's super easy to apply those cleanses while you're waiting for the damage to hit. So she hits her 2-1 combo, Geb comes and shields. It doesn't even leave the guy vulnerable, right? Because now he has a Geb shield around him. The same thing with Hel. If you're in lane against the Hel, you really have to hit your 2-1 on the Hel. You can't hit it on anybody around Hel because Hel will just cleanse, or you have to wait for the cleanse to be down. Same thing with Kiron. Like anybody with cleanses really counters Nox really hard. So for that reason alone, I don't think she'll ever be routinely picked in any kind of competitive play, whether it's SPL or your local community league or whatever you're playing, your in-houses, or even a lot of ranked games. I don't know, ranked you get away with stuff because people don't think in ranked. It can fit into a comp because it's a kind of a niche pick that not many people think about very much, right? If you know all of their cleanses are banned away, that Nox is open, and she actually might work really well into whatever comp that you're playing against, maybe like an Arthur or something where having that silence and that AoE and all that is really going to help your team outplay the other team. So for that reason, I don't think she'll be really great anytime soon, but she's definitely really fun, and maybe you'll want to have her as a pocket pick, you know, as that niche pick that really decimates the other team, as maybe like a last pick or something. Or you'll just want to pick her in some non-competitive in-houses, or just hope for the best with some blind picks in casual. All of those things are really fine. She is a really fun character to play. Really frustrating to play against too. So here are a couple of tips with her gameplay that are gonna be really essential for you to just take advantage of all that Nox has. First of all, stay near your support or your tankier teammates as much as possible. Nox's ability to hide in her teammates while her abilities are on cooldown is extremely valuable. And because of this, Nox has way more freedom to position a little bit more aggressively than a lot of other mids would be able to. Secondly, pay attention to your team's setup for your skill shot combo. And this is a general rule of thumb with like most mages with any kind of skill shots, but it's very important to be effective on Nox, especially against better players. Be patient, let your teammates hit their crowd control so that you can't miss your kit. And this requires you to be in position when they are attacking, not to be so far up that you're all the way in front of your guardian or your support. You don't want to be so far up that you get poked out and then you have to back off before your team can even land their CC. So paying attention to your team is always important in mid, but paying attention to your team's crowd control is extremely important with Nox in particular. All right, let's talk about builds. I always say this before I talk about any builds. There are usually many viable ways to build a character. You want the way you build to reflect how you want to play for your character in that particular game against a particular other team. And all builds should be determined based on the team strategy against the other team. So with that being said, let me share one of my favorite ways to build Nox. So keeping in mind that the mid laner is usually the heart of the team fight, there are certain requirements, at least in my mind, for what you need on a mid laner. For mids with high scaling like Nox, you're going to want your in-game build to have high power. You're going to want 30 to 40% pen so you can do anything to the tanks. And I like to have at least 30% cooldown on my mages that don't have really low cooldowns, you know, the ones like Hebo. And that's because when you're in like a more casual setting, or you know, and maybe it's just my skill level, having shorter cooldowns limits your window of vulnerability. And you want to keep that as low as possible. It makes it harder for the jungle to gank you. It makes it harder for, you know, their solo laner to dive you, all sorts of things. It gives you smaller windows where you're ineffective. Now, if you feel like you're really effective and you don't have to worry about your cooldowns, or your team is doing really well and you just want some really, really high impact items in your build, then that's great. You don't have to have all that cooldown. So for me, the most common build path tends to be starting with Mage's Blessing, going into Magic Focus, which is the tier 1 of Spear Magus. I finish my Shoes of Focus, and I finish my Spear Magus. This sets me up to have a really strong mid game with Nox. So at this point in the game, I have 20% cooldown, I have 10% flat pin, and 195 magic power. And I have the Spear Magus passive, which not only helps me, but helps my team apply loads of damage while I have the enemy locked into Nox's 2-1 combo. And at that point, it's practically a free kill. So after that point in the build, what else is really essential on Nox? Well, you need high power on Nox. She has really great scaling. You don't want to sleep on just how much damage she can do with a high power build. So going into the late game, you're obviously going to want more power, and you're going to want to start building percentage pen, and a little bit more cooldown helps more than 20%, at least in my opinion. So with Nox having high scaling and high utility, I've been having really, really great success with this niche item, Staff of Mirrodin. Why? because it really fits well into the build, and Nox makes really great use of it. With this item, you have even more utility, damage output, and creative options in the fight. So you can open up a fight with your ult, right? Dealing loads of damage, debuffing the enemy. You can throw out your 2, you can hit your 1, or you can throw out your first 2, let your teammate CC them into your 2, and then you still have your 2-1 combo that you can do after he gets out of that. And that, if that's not a death sentence, I don't know what you're doing wrong. You can see your teammates getting blown up. Use your ult to nerf their damage, right? You can 1-2-1. You can double dash in certain situations. You know, there's just so much more creativity you have, especially on a character like Nox with Staff of Mirrodin. And it's really, I feel like as an item, it's really been slept on, but with high utility mages like Nox, like for me, it's almost essential, and it got buffed. It's also cheaper to build, and it fits really well into this portion of the build. After Staff of Mirrodin, I typically pick up Charon's Coin because up to this point, Nox's MP5 is really suffering. You still need a 20% penetration item, and that gets you up to 30% pen. It gives you better sustain, both in HP5 and MP5. And with those core items, you can really fill in the rest of your build. Obviously, if you can fit more high power items like maybe Rod of Tahuti into your build, that really helps. Rod of Tahuti even has a great passive for Nox's ult. But if you're feeling like you're getting dove hard or whatever, you still have the option to build some defense, maybe Mantle, or maybe some other kind of defense item or utility item. There's never this build and avoid that is absolutely efficient against every single team comp. You always build against the team that you're actually playing against. With that being said, let me talk about this one kind of sidebar issue. Everyone makes a really huge deal about building anti-heal, and rightfully so. Not having anti-heal into certain comps is really game-changing. But a lot of people stop the conversation right there at, you have to build anti-heal. Not many people talk about the other half of the conversation of anti-heal, which is applying the anti-heal. So the question is, does Nox actually apply anti-heal well? Kinda. Her ult is by far the most effective way to apply Divine Ruin, which is going to be every 40 to 60 seconds. Aside from the ult, you aren't realistically going to apply anti-heal unless you hit them with the 2-1 combo, which should be a death sentence for anybody without beads anyway. So anti-heal doesn't really matter if you're dead, right? But because Nox's ult is such a great initiation to a team fight, having Divine into a high healing comp is actually a really great way to facilitate your team's control in a team fight. So I'm not saying never get anti-heal on Nox, but I think in most games with little to non-significant amounts of healing on the other team, it's not really that necessary. And that's all I have for you guys. Thanks for watching the video. Please, if you enjoyed this discussion, like, sub, join our community, talk in the Discord, play games together. This is the sort of community that we can discuss things and nobody gets really offended or angry at each other, because it's just a discussion and it's just a video game. But we all enjoy it and we all love it, and we all want to be the community that Smite really deserves, because it actually is a great game. Any kind of feedback and discussion is welcomed. Until the next one, be the positive voice that our community really needs, especially right now with everything going on in the world.